here it is 12 years later almost, and we can look at it now through the lens of everything else Hollywood has gone through in the past decade and some change. And I think we can appreciate Avatar for what it is. I think we can appreciate Avatar for what it was attempting to accomplish. Hi everyone, how you guys doing? Matt Jarbo here at $3 Theater, and this is going to be an interesting video to make because I'm going to be talking about why Avatar, here it is, nearly 12 years later, is more relevant now than ever before. And it doesn't just have to do with the fact that Ubisoft today announced that Avatar Frontiers of Pandora is going to be coming out sometime in the next year, being developed using the Snowdrop engine that they use with the Division games. Or the fact that James Cameron has Avatar 2 dropping next year as well, and we're probably going to start seeing something about that this summer. When I think about the movie Avatar, I got to go back to 2009, specifically Comic-Con 2009, when I was in Hall H when they showed off 22 minutes of the movie in 3D, and it was crazy to see. It was unexpected. All of us were wowed visually, and it was just a very unique experience, and one that carried with me throughout the remainder of the year until I was able to go and see the movie in 3D IMAX when it came out that December. And I saw it a couple times in 3D IMAX, as did I'm sure many of you. And since then, we've entered this weird place of cultural relevance in regards to Avatar and how it's been treated and how people talk about it. And one of the things that I find to be very interesting is a lot of the sheer dismissal that people have when they talk about this movie, when in reality, they shouldn't be dismissing it. They should relatively be embracing it, because Cameron, as he generally tends to prove, is usually ahead of the game. And let me explain why. I know that when people think about longevity in franchises, they think about something like the Marvel Cinematic Universe or Star Wars, or things where there's merchandise or cultural relevancies in regards to commentary made in the movie or characters in the movies or so on and so forth. And that ends up being something that gets used as a bit of criticism for this particular film. Like, oh, it came out in December 2009. Yeah, it did go on to make $2.7 billion worldwide. It's currently the #1 movie of all time in regards to box office, once again beating out Avatar and Endgame. And I'll talk a bit about that here in a minute. But ultimately, when you think about Avatar as a whole, the idea is something that is simple. And what Cameron did is create something that is simple and very straightforward, and it gives you this very, very fun adventure. So I just got done watching the first 35 minutes of the movie again, just to kind of see how it held up after all this time. And I wanted to see the introduction, I wanted to see the exposition, and I wanted to see kind of just how it set things up again, because I remember the last time I saw the movie was on Blu-ray in 2010 when the movie came out. And for me, I remember specifically watching it and feeling relatively underwhelmed by it at the time, and I realized why just today. Avatar is an experience. What James Cameron created was an experience. It was meant to be in its bubble. It was meant to be at that time. It was jaw-dropping special effects. It was 3D like you've never seen it before. In fact, Avatar was so popular that it accounted for like 70% of all 3D ticket sales in 2010. Because keep in mind, it came out December 2009. So, but in 2010, it was like 70%, 73%, I think, of all ticket sales were all for Avatar in 3D. And it kicked off this massive 3D craze that Hollywood just dove into for years. And they ultimately ran it into the ground. So much so now that IMAX thankfully offers 2D experiences, because not everything needs to be in 3D. But Avatar, the way that I saw it originally, the way that I saw it to the best of my experience, was obviously 3D. I know my dad saw it a couple times in 3D IMAX. I'm sure a bunch of you saw it in 3D or 3D IMAX. And that is the experience that you remember. And then when you see it after that, it doesn't have the same impact because it doesn't feel the same. You're watching something that was designed for 3D IMAX and the best possible format, and it feels kind of muted and maybe demure when watching it on home video. And that is obviously a reality. But here it is 12 years later almost, and we can look at it now through the lens of everything else Hollywood has gone through in the past decade and some change. And I think we can appreciate Avatar for what it is. I think we can appreciate Avatar for what it was attempting to accomplish, which was, yes, showcase new graphical capabilities that James Cameron was pioneering, and what he's got coming down the pipeline, I think, is going to be relatively insane. And also just enjoy something that was very simple, straightforward, dumb, and fun. And I feel that when it comes to certain movies, you can't be dumb and fun anymore. So, literally in the first 18 minutes of Avatar, from when it starts on Disney Plus to the first 18 minutes of that movie, you are given all the exposition you need. You learn about Pandora. You learn about Jake Sully and his brother Tommy, who died. You learn about the Na'vi. You learn about the conflict between the company, the mercenaries, and the tribe. And you learn about unobtainium. Which, look, I'll be fully fair. I think unobtainium is kind of the dumbest name, but I think Giovanni Ribisi sells that kind of greedy corporate Paul Reiser-esque shill that we learn in Aliens, that we got in Aliens, is very much that kind of character. And again, if you think about Cameron in the work he does with science fiction, he does pop sci-fi. He doesn't do hard sci-fi. It's pop sci-fi. It might be a little bit indicative of other storylines. I mean, this one is very, very, very rooted in what people would call Fern Gully or Dances with Wolves, or Pocahontas, and a number of other tropes are used in this movie. And that is true. There's no denying it. You could even argue some cases maybe like the white savior complex comes into play, because that's a lot of, the Dances with Wolves, Pocahontas, the element that we saw. And I'm not saying that's the case or that's what his intent was. But there's a line when we first meet Giovanni Ribisi's character and he's talking with Sigourney Weaver, and he says, you build him a school, you teach him English. He's calling them all savages. He's not saying the indigenous population. He's referring to them as just basically subhuman trash. And a lot of that has to do with, again, it's very, very, very kind of parallel and commentary on our Western expansionism in this country, in North America, and even globally, and how we've treated indigenous populations in those specific environments while we're trying to mine for natural resources and run them out of their homes while still trying to maintain this veneer of peace. And the reason why I feel that it's one of the reasons why it's very culturally relevant today is, I don't know if any of you have been paying attention. I did cover this on my other channel, talking about the Kamloops Residential School and the recent discovery of 215 graves in a mass gravesite of indigenous children, some as young as 3 years old. And the reason why this is relevant is because we have been taking notice in the past couple of years about how Western culture has come into power and how it has tied into our sins of the past. And there's no better way to describe it. I'm sorry. This isn't an attack on Western culture or Western ideology, but there is a harsh reality from what we as a country did to those people who lived here before us, before we took it over. That's just the reality of it. And that is a lot of what the conversation that James Cameron was going for in regards to this. And that is, especially now looking at it through that lens, something that I don't think a lot of us in 2009 are really looking at. There's a lot there to kind of unpack. Never mind the concept of climate change, even some of that tied in a bit to Pandora and to the movie itself. And so it gives you an idea that what Cameron was touching upon 12 years ago was something that he clearly was paying attention to, and he just wanted to make a social commentary of in this pop sci-fi movie. And here it is, me now as being a lot older and looking back on it, I can see now more of what he was going for. And on top of that, the movie is just very simple. It's straightforward. You hit the ground running literally. As soon as Jake gets in his avatar, he is on the ground, he is running, and he is out there ready to explore. Cameron knew that when it came to showcasing what Pandora was going to be, he knew what the spectacle was. He knew how to set the story up, and then he was going to let it just go from there. He didn't want to get bogged down in a lot of the over-the-top, unneeded exposition. A lot of it is very tropey. All right, Jake Sully is torn between serving, the general, right, who wants him to be a spy to learn more about the Na'vi, whether or not they need to work with them or how to work with them or how to kill them faster, or to honor his brother's memory by working with the scientists in order to be to use the avatar. And so we get this very interesting dichotomy about where he stands from his old life to his new life and where it is currently in between, which I like that dynamic as well. And it's one that I don't think gets enough play. The story is filled with very fun characters who are, they have some fun dialogue. I think Sigourney Weaver has a lot of great dialogue in the first 25, 30 minutes of the movie. And it just, again, it kind of just like it's very fast paced and it hits the ground running. And then you get to experience this event. And the reason why I think, again, why we're going to see a massive push for Avatar coming up in the next year and a half, and why I think we're going to be getting a lot more of it, not as only just because of the movies. James Cameron doing Avatar 2, 3, 4, and 5, which, believe me, he will do 2, 3, 4, and 5. It's going to be the new video game, and it's going to be a renewed interest into Pandora as a whole. But I will fully admit that it might be a bit of a tough sale for some people, because I was just looking at this editorial from back in February over on Rotten Tomatoes, and they were criticizing Avatar, saying that it's almost unworthy of the money that it made. And you might be one of the people out there who agree with that take, and they say, why would this movie deserve this money? It didn't really add anything. It didn't really do anything, which is actually a lie. It did a lot. It actually expanded cinematography integration with CG quite a bit. If you pay attention to a lot of the CG scenes, James Cameron added in film grain to the shots to make it look more like it was shot on film, to keep it in line with the other live action footage, to keep it looking very, similar and homogenistic on that front. And I think it worked out really well. And I do think it ultimately, like, the world building still holds up, and I think the graphics still hold up. And I've seen movies that are recent that have even worse CG than Avatar. So it's very much been able to hold its own over the span of the last decade. But we're used to franchises at this point, and I think that's another problem. So going back to that editorial on Rotten Tomatoes, they were saying, like, no one is interested in a Jake Sully Funko Pop, and no one is biting at the chomps for like Avatar merchandise or anything like that, which is ultimately true. It is ultimately true, but that doesn't mean everything, right? Our connection to merchandise doesn't necessarily indicate all of its popularity. And I say this because you've got the Flight of Passage ride at Walt Disney World, which is still really popular. In fact, in 2020, it was ranked, I believe, number 6 out of all popular rides at Walt Disney World. And believe it or not, it actually ranks higher amongst women than it does men in their top 10 rides at Walt Disney World. So there is still a very large desire to experience Pandora, to experience this world. And that is, again, part of what Cameron is up to. It really is the experience. It really is all of that kind of stuff. But not only that, but go and look at what happened when 20th Century Studios, aka Disney, re-released Avatar in China during, one of the brief moments of respite in this whole COVID situation. And the movie made enough money to overtake Endgame at the box office to reclaim its throne as the highest grossing movie of all time. And there's a reason for that. There's an absolute reason for that. And that has everything to do with the fact that it is an experience that people remember. It is one of those movies where if you know anyone who was alive in the 1970s, who's a big nerd, they'll tell you, I remember going to see Star Wars for the very first time. I remember all of that for the very first time and where I was at in my experience with it. And you talk to people out there and you ask them, what was it like when you saw Avatar for the first time? And they'll tell you what it was like when they saw Avatar for the first time and how much they liked it because of the experience. Now we get to see the continuation of that experience with new and advanced technology. And that is going to be what Cameron brings to the table. As I've always said, never bet against James Cameron, period, point blank, full stop. He has never really let anybody down. You may want to argue with the longevity of some of his properties like Titanic and, maybe even Avatar. But look, Aliens is still heavily talked about. Terminator 2, still heavily talked about. Terminator Dark Fate, he produced it, and a lot of people weren't really happy with some of the takes that they went with it, but still his name being attached was a big enough draw. Alita Battle Angel, he was definitely involved in the making of that, and that has a large cult following. His documentaries, the upcoming Avatar movies, True Lies, even, which is my personal favorite James Cameron movie, which still needs a 4K release, god damn it. Never bet against Cameron. And so while you might sit there right now and be so far removed from Avatar to think to yourself, yeah, it's irrelevant, it's pointless, it's dumb, it's trash, I really invite you to go back and watch it again. I invite you to go back and check it out, because sitting there and watching it just again, I forgot how much fun it was. I forgot just how much fun this movie was to watch, because that was the whole point. Yes, there was social commentary. It was tied in with this world that definitely pulled stories from other people, from other tales. But you know what? That's not uncommon for Hollywood. How many times do you hear of a movie that's pitched as, oh, it's like this meets that? And that's exactly what Avatar is. Holding it to a higher standard than we hold other movies that are guilty of the exact same thing is 100% unfair. But looking at it from just a filmmaking perspective, from a technology perspective, and even its commentary on how we as a Western nation treated indigenous people, as well as touching on the issues of climate change, do prove that Avatar is now more relevant than ever. And I think it's something worth going back and giving it another go. And I look forward to seeing what they do with it. And I look forward to seeing where they take it. And I might be all alone in this. I might be all alone in this rant, but that's okay. I don't mind that. My channel is to talk about what I like, why I like it, and to see your guys' thoughts and opinions on it. So let me know your thoughts. Let me know your opinions down in the comment section. If you guys want, please toss a like. Please leave a comment. Please subscribe. I'll talk to you all later. Look for another Nearly Midnight movie chat tonight. I'll talk to you guys then. Have yourself a great night, and peace out.